The hotel room was cold, the kind of cold that settled into your chest and made you forget it was the middle of July in Pennsylvania. The air conditioner rattled quietly, leaking condensation down the wall like a slow, steady tear. The wallpaper, yellowed from age and moisture, clung stubbornly to the plaster beneath. And in the corner, a black duffel bag sat upright against the armchair, unzipped just enough to reveal the red yarn hair and worn cotton face of the doll inside. Annabelle. Dan Rivera had grown used to the quiet unease that came with traveling. Hotel rooms always felt a little off, never fully still, never entirely his. But this room, in this old town steeped in ghosts, with this particular passenger tucked into the corner, was different. Dan hadn't started out chasing spirits. He'd been a grounded man, a plumber by trade, a veteran of the U.S. Army, a husband and father of two. But back in 2013, a strange experience at an abandoned farmhouse, something with no easy explanation, had nudged him down another path. He picked up an EMF meter, began reading case files, attending small investigations, and eventually found his way to the Warren Legacy Foundation, and later, the New England Society for Psychic Research. The groups were founded in the shadow of Ed and Lorraine Warren, two of the most polarizing figures in modern paranormal history. Whether you believed them or not, their cases were legendary. The Perron family, the Enfield poltergeist, the Amityville haunting, and Annabelle. The real Annabelle was nothing like her movie counterpart. She wasn't porcelain or menacing. She was a worn, Raggedy Ann doll, soft-bodied with button eyes and red yarn hair. But her reputation was dark. According to the Warrens, the doll was possessed, tied not to a child's spirit, but something much older and more dangerous. The stories surrounding her were many. One young man reportedly lost control of his motorcycle after taunting the doll at the Warren Museum. A priest who insulted her during a blessing later crashed his car. People who challenged her were said to fall mysteriously ill, suffer freak accidents, or lose loved ones shortly after. Dan didn't believe everything, but he believed enough. He'd handled Annabelle on several tours before. He followed every protocol, never touched the glass with bare hands, never left her unattended, and never, under any circumstances, joked about her. He treated her like a loaded weapon. The summer 2025 tour had been smooth. Stops in Virginia and Maryland had drawn good crowds. On Saturday, July 12th, the team arrived in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, the third stop. The town was thick with ghost tours and Civil War reenactors, a fitting backdrop. The setup was typical: a small event space connected to a historic hotel, rows of folding chairs, a stage, and locked display cases under soft light. Annabelle's case was reinforced with glass and etched prayers. 2 seals were fixed to the frame, one Catholic, one from a lesser-known religious order specializing in artifact containment. Dan spoke passionately. He was calm, respectful, and honest. He told the audience that he didn't seek to convince anyone, just to share what he'd seen and what others had endured. When asked about Annabelle, his tone shifted. "She's not evil," he said, "but she's not just a doll. If you choose to laugh, that's your decision, but I don't recommend it." He reminded everyone not to touch the glass, not to provoke the objects, and not to issue challenges out loud. Most attendees nodded solemnly. A few chuckled. Afterward, Dan helped pack up the exhibits. Annabelle was sealed carefully in her travel case and loaded into the trailer. Around 11 p.m., Dan returned to his room. He called his wife. They talked about groceries, about their daughter's upcoming camp, about a leak under the kitchen sink. Normal things. At 7:40 a.m. the next morning, Dan missed the team's routine check-in. By 9 a.m., hotel staff entered the room. Dan was lying on the bed, fully clothed, phone in one hand, TV still playing silently in the background. He was unresponsive. The room was undisturbed, no sign of a struggle. EMTs arrived within minutes but confirmed what they already suspected. Dan Rivera was gone. He was 54 years old. The preliminary autopsy pointed to sudden cardiac arrest. There were no drugs in his system, no alcohol, no prior heart conditions, no warning signs. One moment he was there, and then he wasn't. The New England Society for Psychic Research released a statement later that evening. "We are heartbroken to confirm the passing of our lead investigator and dear friend, Dan Rivera. Dan was a man of integrity, discipline, and compassion. His dedication to this work came from a place of genuine curiosity and deep respect. He will be remembered not only for the cases he studied, but for the kindness he brought to every room. We ask that his family be given the privacy they deserve during this devastating time." But as condolences poured in, so did the rumors. He had handled Annabelle less than 12 hours before his death. He had issued warnings about her on stage, cautioned others, followed every rule. But was that enough? Some in the paranormal community recalled earlier incidents. A camera operator had once fainted while filming the doll. A handler in 2009 suffered a breakdown after transporting her. There were stories, hard to verify, but persistent, about car crashes, illnesses, even deaths. To skeptics, it was coincidence. To believers, it was a pattern. And then came the whispers that Annabelle's case may have been improperly sealed, that the prayers weren't recent, that someone, a guest perhaps, had knocked on the glass during the event. None of it could be proven. None of it mattered to Dan's wife and daughters. But it mattered to those who had worked alongside him, who knew how cautious he was, how serious he took the job. They believed Dan wouldn't have let his guard down, that if something had gone wrong, it wasn't because of him. Annabelle was immediately removed from the tour. She was returned to her permanent display and has not been seen in public since. The remainder of the summer tour was quietly canceled. Dan's funeral was held the following weekend in his hometown in upstate New York. The society covered all expenses. Friends, colleagues, and fellow investigators filled the pews. There were no press interviews. His wife asked only for prayers and for the rumors to stop. But they haven't. The truth, if there is one, remains buried, somewhere between folklore and fear. All we know for certain is that a healthy, disciplined, grounded man went to sleep after handling one of the most infamous alleged haunted objects in the world, and never woke up. Some call it tragedy, others call it proof. And somewhere in a sealed glass case, behind reinforced locks and holy inscriptions, a ragged doll with button eyes and a stitched smile waits. Thank you for listening to The Lantern's Tale. Subscribe for more true stories, if you dare.